We talked a couple of days ago on stream about why streamers shouldn't play Diablo Immortal, in my opinion. It got into a conversation about regulation, and that got into like a conversation about guns. Shit, man, it went all over the shop, honestly. But some of the comments on here I find really interesting. It made me want to clarify a couple of things. Because I feel like there's some things that people have misunderstood about what I was saying, really, you know? And I feel like it's difficult to make any point if you're even slightly addressing other things that, or things that other streamers are doing. And I purposely, like, I don't know who is wailing Diablo Immortal on their stream. I know that a lot of streamers are doing it. I don't really watch other people's streams because if I'm not streaming, I'm working on videos and stuff like that. You know, so all I know is from Twitter and stuff, there's a lot of people dropping a lot of money into Diablo Immortal right now to kind of show their viewers how bad it is. And yeah, Asmon's one of those people. So the problem is I can't say anything about it without some people going, oh, he's trying to take a pop at Asmongold, and I will ignore pretty much everything he said and jump to the defense of my favorite streamer, whoever that may be that's doing the thing. And like I said, I'm desperately trying not to criticize any individual streamer. I'm sure there are some streamers that are doing it really, really well and like putting up a great show of like showing people how bad this game is and why you shouldn't do that, exactly why it's really bad in the way that the monetization works. And that's awesome. I think that's great. However, I also think that no matter how well you're doing it, and no matter how legitimately you're showing people how bad it is, and no matter how many people are watching that stream going, yeah, you're right, this is disgusting, I'm never playing that, I think there's a flip side to that, where there are definitely going to be people watching you play the game and being exposed to those parts of the game which are the parts which are specifically designed to reel you in, like the dopamine parts, right? The shiny lights, the flashing images, like the good graphics and the satisfying sound effects and stuff like that. When you read about how shit Diablo Immortal is, or when someone just tells you how shit Diablo Immortal is, you don't see those things and you're not exposed to them. When you see it on stream, even if it's someone explicitly showing you how bad those things are, even if they're doing that very well, there's gonna be an amount of people, and they will be the most vulnerable people, who are actually going to get reeled in by that. Especially on a stream with their favorite streamer, because, you know, a favorite streamer is always, if they're good and they're a good streamer, and, you know, big streamers are very fucking good streamers, then they're always having a good time with their chat, right? So they're playing this game to show you how terrible it is, but there's still laughter, there's still jokes, they're still having a really good time together playing this game. You know, those vulnerable people who are watching this thing, they then associate that with having a good time, right? That's not true, Tali, or I'd be a wow at it from watching you. Shush now. It's the same argument XQC uses to stream slots. Yeah, exactly. So I'm completely against people streaming slots. I'm like 1000% against it. I think streaming slots is like an incredibly dangerous thing to do. I don't think it's good. I don't think that should be on a website that kids can watch. It's mind-blowing to me. The game at least tells you the odds of getting stuff. What, Diablo Immortal? Are you sure? Because that's another thing that I wanted to clarify, because we did get talking into, we did talk about guns and stuff then for a little bit. Which is, you know, whatever, man. People have like very strong opinions on guns and things like that. And there's a comment in here which is like, oh, so you say you want to decriminalize drugs, but you want to regulate guns? Hypocrite. I'm like, no. Let's be clear what regulation means, okay? Regulation is not banning. When I say I want gambling regulated in video games, or I want games that have blatant fucking gambling in them to be regulated like gambling, that doesn't mean I want those games banned. I'm not suggesting you ban Diablo Immortal. Far from it. I'm not suggesting that having these fucking disgusting things in games are illegal. I just want them regulated as the gambling that they are. You know? And so people talk about Diablo Immortal being banned in the Netherlands. It's not. It's not banned in the Netherlands. But in order to be, like, playable in the Netherlands, it has to conform to Netherlands gambling laws, because they recognize it as the gambling it is. And they don't want to do that. They could easily conform to Netherlands gambling laws by opening up their code to them and making all like the things like public and obvious, which is what the Netherlands gambling law demands. They don't do that. Diablo Immortal is not banned in the Netherlands. Blizzard have chosen not to make Diablo Immortal available in the Netherlands so that they don't have to conform to the gambling laws there. There's actually quite a big difference. You know? They're so fucking shady that they don't want to make the inner workings of this game public and available, which is what they have to do to be allowed in the Netherlands and to be regulated as such, right? So when people say it's banned in the Netherlands, that's not true. Blizzard choose not to make it available in the Netherlands so they don't have to tell you this stuff. And this stuff isn't public knowledge because Netherlands, very cleverly, light years ahead of basically all other countries with this, they recognize the gambling in video games for being proper gambling, and they want to regulate it as such. So no one's talking about banning all this shit. No one's talking about banning loot boxes. No one's talking about, like, you know, curtailing people's freedoms. It's just regulating it for what it is, right? And Belgium is the same. Yeah, exactly. So when I talk about regulating guns, I'm not talking about banning guns. I'm a firm believer in the right to bear arms, even in this country, the UK. And I can get a gun in the UK very easily, honestly, legally, right? But it's going to be regulated. That's how I believe it should be. When I say I want to decriminalize drugs, it's specifically so we can regulate them, because you can't regulate drugs when they're criminalized and illegal, right? I want to decriminalize them specifically so we can regulate them. Like, one of the reasons drugs are so fucking dangerous is because there's no regulation, because they're illegal. So they get cut with really unhealthy shit that isn't even the drug. You buy a drug, you have no fucking idea what's in it. You buy cocaine, it could be cut with fucking anything. Right? And that's what's dangerous about it. I want to decriminalize it specifically so we can regulate it. So me wanting to regulate guns and me wanting to decriminalize drugs is not hypocritical at all. It's the same thing. And likewise with predatory things in video games, right? So I think something that a lot of content creators are doing right now, they remember how much money they made off of outrage about Diablo Immortal 5 years ago, and they are doing the same thing again, but they're not getting to the root cause of the problem, right? Because regulation is the answer. You can't ban this stuff, right? You can't ban gambling because gambling's okay. Like, gambling's okay if it's regulated, right? There are going to be people that have problems with gambling, and a lot of regulation is there to protect those people. Likewise with alcohol, likewise with smoking, likewise with any potentially addictive activity, right? But I don't want to ban drinking. I don't want to ban smoking. I don't want to ban gambling. Gambling can be good. Like, it's just a fun activity if it's done safely and healthily, and regulation is a really important part of that. So I don't want to ban this stuff. If people want to make bullshit, fucking disgusting games, which are just out to rinse you as hard as possible, why the fuck not? If people enjoy it, why the fuck not? But you've got to fucking regulate it like the gambling that it is. And that is what no country wants to do at the moment, apart from Belgium and the Netherlands, who are obviously very progressive when it comes to this. We've basically got laws which aren't fit for purpose at the moment. Our gambling regulations don't take in video games like this for some fucking reason, because the people that make our laws are old fucking assholes who don't play video games, right? You know? Addictive things like watching Taliesin streams and videos need some regulations. Yeah, cool. Can we regulate playing cards like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic as well then? Well, I think they are, honestly. I think there are regulations in place which affect like the odds in cards packs and things like that. And I think they have to be made public the same way that they do lottery tickets. And when you buy scratch cards and stuff, like the odds of winning the various different prizes in scratch cards have to be public and well known, and there has to be like a record of them. There doesn't have to be that in video games. You know, and that's what I mean. And like I say, the Netherlands has not banned Diablo Immortal. Diablo Immortal could be available in the Netherlands if Blizzard decided to allow it to be, but they would then have to comply with the gambling regulations there. Overwatch is not banned in the Netherlands. Like, Blizzard chooses not to make it available in the Netherlands so they don't have to make the odds of their loot boxes public. And how fucking shady is that? Like, that's literally even worse. So when people say, oh, it's so bad, it's literally banned in the Netherlands, it's not actually true. It's actually worse than that. Oh, is it playable in the Netherlands now? Okay, fine, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. So I'm not suggesting you ban any of this stuff. Likewise, I'm not suggesting that you ban guns or drugs. I'm just saying that, you know, I want it regulated. I think that's a pretty fair thing to say, right? And I think that has to be the focus, right? We have to be, you know, it's all very well to kind of like be outraged about this. But if you don't focus on what the answer is, if you don't focus on what solves this problem and helps this problem, then what's the point? How would you regulate stuff like pay to win in Immortal, though? Well, for one, you have to have caps, which is what gambling regulation does on spending. Like, just look at what gambling regulation is, right? And I think there should be new gambling regulation made specifically for video games, just like it was for slots when they became a thing, right? Like, you create the laws to fit the problem. And at the moment, we haven't got any gambling regulation on these games at all. So it's going to be stuff like all the odds have to be public and available to see. There has to be like a cap on spending, and there has to be like a load of other things as well. And obviously, gambling is illegal for under 18-year-olds. For a fucking reason. Like, and the fact that it isn't in these games is absolutely crazy. Crazy. WoW mount runs are kind of like gambling. Yeah, except the fact you don't pay any money. Yeah, if you had to pay $1 for an ICC run, we could be having this conversation, but you don't. Gambling law needs to be put towards games because kids develop habits young. And not just kids, man. Like, gambling law protects adults as well and just makes everything out in the open and obvious. It's just the natural thing to do. So I feel like at the moment, everyone's just making a lot of money by telling you how bad Diablo Immortal is. And I think that's fine. There's absolutely a place for that. I think there's absolutely a place for that. But it's not the important thing. Because these games, like Diablo Immortal, like Diablo Immortal's business model is just ripped straight from NetEase's fucking book, okay? It's what all NetEase games do, is this style of monetization. And it's been rife in the market for, you know, years. And now a bunch of people that haven't been involved with mobile games before are being exposed to it because of Diablo Immortal. And I think that's a very good thing for, like, raising awareness of how shit it has been for a long time. Diablo Immortal was always going to be made specifically so it could indulge in those kind of practices, which is just horrible. Horrible. And it was always going to be a really good game, which is another reason why all the outrage narrative around Diablo Immortal when it was announced was so unhelpful, because it was all like, oh, it's going to be shit. Oh, it's going to be terrible. No, it's not. It's going to be really good. And that's one of the bad things about it. It's because, of course, they're going to make it really good because they want to make as much money out of it as possible. And like that, they want it to be as addictive as possible. So it's going to be really good. Of course it is. Like, guys. And now I feel like everyone's just going straight back to the outrage, which there's definitely an important role for. We should be outraged about this, but it's actually not the most important thing. The most important thing is getting this shit regulated. And getting it regulated for the gambling that it is. That's the most important thing. And it is damaging to the Blizzard brand, of course it is. Yeah, totally. Just like Capcom and Ubisoft and EA making fucking slot machines out of all their franchises does, right? We've got a new Resident Evil coming out, guys. It's a pachinko machine. EA have made $6 billion since 2015 on FIFA Ultimate Team. I always felt that has gotten more and more predatory over the years. Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing. Simply pointing out that it's gambling is never going to stop people doing it. Pointing out predatory gambling practices is not going to be enough to stop people doing it. FIFA is the example I always use for this. People don't play FIFA because they don't know it's gambling. They're not playing FIFA because they're oblivious to the fact that it's gambling, and if they knew, they wouldn't play it. They like the gambling in FIFA. They like Ultimate Team because it is gambling. Because gambling is fun. So just telling people it's gambling isn't going to be enough to stop them, like, playing Ultimate Team. And why should it? If they like gambling, yes, they're going to be attracted to the video game, which has gambling in it. But it needs to be regulated like gambling, therefore. And that's the thing. And I think we're focusing so much on the, oh my God, look at this. It's just gambling. It's just gambling. It's like, yeah, loads of people really fucking like gambling. That's why this shit is so successful. Like, just telling them it's gambling, exposing that it's gambling is not enough. You got to push for government regulation. That's the only thing that can protect people who are vulnerable to it. Just telling them it's gambling won't help them. Yeah, people love to fucking gamble. I feel like a lot of gamers and a lot of content creators have this thing in their head where it's like, if I just expose the gambling, people won't play this thing. And it's like, no, people love the gambling. That's why they play the thing. We've got to regulate it. I keep getting told about a screenshot that I've been DM'd. So here is like an overview of the odds and stuff in a lot of the bundles with Diablo. So if you were going to count this as basically a slot machine, right? Then the problem with having a 4.5% chance is that it can feasibly never ever happen. If you roll a dice, then your chances of rolling a 1 are the same every time you roll it. In slot machines in the UK, I know that it has to have guaranteed payouts. So if the chance of winning is like 2%, it has to pay out at least 2% of the time. Stuff like that, which is why you get people hanging around people playing slots, waiting for them to like drop a load of money in it and leave because they know that it's about to pay out, because it has to. And the thing is, we don't know how you would regulate that because this stuff isn't being made public because they're specifically not launching in places where they would have to make stuff like that public. There's a reason why Blizz aren't putting this game out in countries that regulate video games like gambling. Whatever they're doing to publish these odds here, it's clearly not enough in countries that actually regulate video games like they're gambling, because otherwise they'd be released there. For some reason, this is not enough to comply with countries that actually regulate these games like gambling, which they should, because it is gambling. So the reason Immortal isn't available in the Netherlands is because Blizzard chooses not to allow it, so that they don't have to do whatever it is they have to do to comply. Which is interesting, isn't it? Is that not interesting? Is that not really fucking shady and scummy? So we can identify things that they are doing that seem to kind of like be helping, you know, with the whole gambling stuff. But whatever they're doing, clearly it's literally not enough for countries that genuinely regulate as if it's gambling. That should tell you everything you need to know, right? That's what I think. I think the answer is in pushing towards your government regulating these games like they're gambling, right? I think that's the only answer. And I think there's absolutely space to be outraged about this, and I think you should be outraged about this. There is like a lot of outrage porn to be had in kind of just indulging in how fucking shit it is. And I think that's fun, that's good content, and it's definitely something which is definitely worth doing. The more you can drag Blizzard's name through the mud on this, the better. Absolutely. And you should be angry about it for sure. Tali, you might be making an erroneous assumption. Might there be another reason why the game is not released in those other countries? Bobby Kotick just hates pancakes, maybe? Bobby Kotick's just got this thing against pancakes, canals, and dams. Basically, if there's no mountains to go skiing, Bobby doesn't want to fucking know. So no games ever get released in the Netherlands. No, it's all to do with gambling. And it's all to do with gambling regulations. Yeah, and like the dumpster fire is super fun. Also, content creators know it's a really fucking good way of making money. Look, the reason that heel versus babyface got a second lease of life on his career was through Diablo Immortal rage. There's so much money to be made on Diablo Immortal outrage, and that's awesome. I think that's really good, but it doesn't fix it. It doesn't fix it. More important than that, you're always going to have a steady stream of people playing these games and dropping money on them. Like, it's how they're designed. It's what they're for. You can't stop that by making outrage videos. It hasn't worked for any other game. It's not going to work for Diablo Immortal. Like, you can stop all your friends playing it. You can stop all the cool kids playing it. You can stop all the discerning gamers playing it. But you're not going to stop the people who potentially have gambling problems who these games are aimed at. And the only way you can do that is with regulation. I know people don't like regulation, but then a lot of people that argue with me against regulation are like, flat out ban it, which I find really weird. It's like, oh, you just want to regulate everything, you fucking commie. Nah, just ban it. Blizz has clearly crossed a line with the amount of monetization here, but it doesn't matter because it's digital service. They lose nothing by keeping it in because the people that aren't going to pay will always not pay. It's all reward, no risk. Exactly. And until we fucking regulate these things properly, we're not going to change the games industry, because the games industry isn't run by people that make and play video games. The games industry is run by the people that own the companies that make and play video games. That's a very, very fucking different thing. I think if you're going to have loot boxes in the game which equate to player power, cosmetics only, sure. But that's all preference. At the end of the day, gambling is gambling, whether it's for player power or cosmetics, and it needs to be regulated as such, right? And then you can make your consumer decisions, like as a consumer, on whether like the monetization in the game is okay or not. But in the meantime, it has to be regulated for what it is, which is gambling. In the same way that like it has to meet standards that video games have to meet in terms of age restrictions and things like that, and carrying certain warnings on it for that, it needs to be, governments need to recognize these things as gambling and they need to regulate them as such. I heard a take that when Microsoft takes over, a lot of this stuff might end because of the difference in shareholder cultures. What's the difference in shareholder cultures? Pretty sure Microsoft is pretty strongly shareholder culture. I feel like a lot of you are giving Microsoft credit that they do not deserve. Microsoft can be all like, oh, we're very anti-loot box, but, you know, this is Blizzard's thing, and we want them to have autonomy, right? We can't tell games publishers what to do. We can't tell them how to make their games. So in this case, I think we're just going to have to sit here making all the money from Diablo Immortal. Shit. Even though we don't approve. If they don't, you know, respect to them. But it's only because if they don't, it's only because they think they're going to make the money by doing something else. So these things have nuance, and they have to be taken on a case-by-case basis. I would say that the way Diablo Immortal does it is absolutely gambling, yeah. What if you spend the same amount of money on Diablo Immortal that you do in WoW? The amount of money that you're spending isn't relevant to whether something is gambling or not. The amount of money that you're allowed to spend is relevant when it comes to regulating the thing that definitely is gambling. But if I spend $1 million on a house, that's not gambling just because it's $1 million, because the house is worth $1 million and I've bought it and I knew I was getting it. And I wanted the house, so I agreed to pay $1 million with it for the person who was selling it. The bank agreed that it was worth $1 million, which is why they gave me the mortgage for it. And that's not gambling. If I go into a blind fucking lottery for a house and I put $1 million in, I might get a house which is worth $1 million. I might get a house which is worth $2 million, but I might also get a house which is worth 10k. That is, yes, gambling. Like, the amount of money isn't relevant to whether something is gambling or not. But loot in WoW is basically gambling as well, with your time. That's a very brain dead take, my friend. I'm very sorry. If that's your take, you are purposely trying to obfuscate like the very real definitions of what gambling is. This is why this shit is still allowed to happen, okay? Is because what we should be doing is pushing for government regulations on this shit, but instead we have people arguing that doing a fucking dungeon in WoW is gambling. And that's why these conversations never fucking get anywhere. Don't get me wrong, I spent $0 in Diablo. I'm just trying to understand why others do. Because people fucking love gambling. Just exposing the fact that it's gambling isn't enough. Because people know it's gambling and they like it. Because gambling is fucking fun, man. Like, it's like trying to dissuade people from taking, like, cocaine by telling them it's going to get them really fucking high. Whoa, guys. Did you know that if you take that cocaine, that is going to get you so fucking high? I guess you don't want to take it now, right? That's literally why I'm taking it. Yeah, gambling is fun for fucking tons of people. It's fun for me. I love playing Texas Hold'em, man. I love playing poker. Poker's fucking brilliant. And it's nowhere near as fun if you're not playing for real money, because the gambling is an intrinsic part of what makes that game fun. And I love it. I don't think Texas Hold'em should be banned. I think it should be regulated as gambling, which it is, correctly. Gambling is super fun, which is why you can't dissuade people from playing Diablo Immortal just by exposing that it's gambling. People know it's gambling, that's why they play it. But you've got to then regulate it as gambling to help protect those people, and also to make the fucking tax money off it that you should. Gambling income gets taxed at a higher rate in most places than just straight video game income, right? It's another reason why Blizz don't want to operate in those countries. Is D&D just story gambling? Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Should be regulated as gambling, right? No, but I mean, so that's my take on the Diablo Immortal thing, which I don't think I made clear when we talked about it the other day. I don't want any of this stuff banned, right? Just because I don't approve of something doesn't necessarily mean it should be banned, but it absolutely should be regulated. And that's the only way you're actually going to get this stuff under control, is by regulating it like gambling, which no country seems to want to do, apart from Belgium and the Netherlands, you know? And at the moment, Blizz don't have to conform with Belgium and the Netherlands regulation because they're two relatively small markets. And if, like, the big markets, you know, if all of Europe and the US force them to comply with gambling regulations in these games, you'd see things change really fucking quickly, frankly. So at the moment, the only thing that's stopping other games like WoW having loot boxes is reputation and public perception. Whereas I would really like one of the other things to stop loot boxes finding their way into WoW to be the amount of regulation that they'd have to comply with. Games publishers have proven that public perception only lasts so long, and you can basically make people accept anything over a long enough period of time. It's the whole frogs in a fucking boiling, like, you slowly boil the water and the frog never even fucking notices, right? You can make people okay with anything over a long enough period of time. Reputation and public perception is not going to be enough in the long run to stop things like that coming into WoW. Regulation probably would be. And that's why when the conversation happens, like it does kind of every year, around, oh, I think it's about time WoW became free to play now, I'm like, God, no. And people are like, oh, it's already so fucking monetized that it might as well be free to play. It's like, you don't know what fucking monetization is, my friends. If you think WoW is aggressively monetized right now, hopefully Diablo Immortal will show people what free to play really means to Blizzard, right? If you didn't understand already through Hearthstone, hopefully Diablo Immortal shows people what free-to-play actually means to Blizzard. Because no one wants that shit, right? WoW is a fucking golden goose. Why would you jeopardize that with loot boxes and shit? I mean, I think eventually they will, because, you know, we live in a shareholder capitalist economy, like, where the line always has to go up. And if it's not going up, you're failing. So yeah, one day they will put loot boxes into WoW when the line isn't going up enough. Because they need the line to go up that month. So they put loot boxes in WoW. They don't give a shit about the next month. They just need the line to go up this month.